I've been involved with Lancaster County Action since we began over 20 years ago. Action stands for Americans for Christian Tradition in Our Nation. We are a political action committee. That means we get involved with campaigns. We exist to elect candidates who will support the Judeo-Christian values on which our nation was founded on.
Hi, I'm Eric Rowe, and I'm glad to be a part of Action. You see, Action lives up to its name. It doesn't offer false promises of hope and change. Instead, it empowers brothers in Christ to join together and make a real change, not only in our nation as a whole, but in our county, in our neighborhoods, in Pennsylvania. I'm thankful that Action allows me to take everything that I hold near and dear to my heart and put it in one place to make a difference. I'm empowered. I hope you're empowered today, and I hope you're empowered enough to take action and help Action in its endeavor to make change in Harrisburg.
Our founding fathers understood that there was no guarantee our democracy would last. In fact, some of them were so unsure that they called it an experiment. They knew exactly what the greatest threats to our Constitution would be. George Washington said, "Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are the indispensable supports." Abraham Lincoln meant something very similar when he said, "If destruction be our lot, we must ourselves be its author and finisher. As a nation of free men, we must live through all time or die by suicide." Another great American president, Calvin Coolidge, said, "Laws must be justified by something more than the will of the majority. They must rest on the eternal foundations of righteousness."
With the fiscal crisis facing our state and our country, it's critical for citizens to get involved and stay involved. And groups like Action give the opportunity for the average person on the street to make their voice heard and to stay involved in the political process, not only for the next election, but throughout the coming years and decades.
Currently, there are 5 chapters of Pennsylvania Action. Lancaster was first formed over 20 years ago. When we began, over half of our state representatives in Lancaster County were pro-abortion. Today, all of our state representatives are pro-life. We have Action chapters in addition to Lancaster in Chester, York, Northampton, and Adams. Wherever an Action chapter exists, it has transformed the political structure of that county to more reflect our Judeo-Christian heritage.
I moved to Chester County with my husband in 1987 to raise our family. My husband and I were very much pro-life with no exceptions, and we were also staunch Republicans. For those of you who are around back in the day, you know that being a pro-life person in politics was not pleasant. In fact, a lot of times you were looked on with disdain, with great displeasure. A lot of times the establishment and the Republican Party really just wished that we would go away. Well, we didn't go away. We worked hard back in the day, but we were a very small, dedicated group of people, often led by Gwen Alexander and others in Chester County. During the time I was involved in politics, I ran several campaigns and I was also an elected official. Again, always staunchly pro-life, but always cognizant of the fact that being pro-life and being a candidate wasn't always the best thing in Pennsylvania or even in Chester County. It was a very difficult time for us. We were fighting an uphill battle.
Today we're seeing many groups who are seeing the need to be involved in the political process. Action has been doing that for 25 years, and in so doing have had a tremendous impact, and they've been a strong voice for conservative principles that yields good government. I think the name Action, if you look at the name itself, says it all. Number one, we're pushing for traditional values in our government, but number two is the acronym itself, Action. What Action recognizes that many others do not is the importance of being involved at the grassroots level. And this is why Action has become such an effective voice.
So much information out on the streets today, listening to the talking heads via radio or television. It can get very confusing to the average voter of exactly what affects them, especially when we talk about state or local politics. Action is a great organization that gives the voter the information they need so they can vote. based on their principles, based on their values. Action is something that is necessary for the constituents of Pennsylvania, and more importantly, it's something that we need to participate in. Any organization is only as good as their participants, and we should all become involved both in action and in our political process.
In 1997, my husband passed away. I had 4 small children, so I completely removed myself from politics, doing nothing but voting twice a year and reading the newspaper. I was completely detached from politics, completely detached from the pro-life organization and movement, so I really stepped back and stepped away. In 2008, after the Obama election, I decided that I really wanted to get back into the race, really wanted to be an elected official again to try to make a difference. So I contacted some of my old buddies in the pro-life movement, including Gwen and others. What I found when I came back was a tremendous sea change in the pro-life movement, the acceptance of pro-life people in the Republican Party. In fact, we were the majority, we were the vocal majority, and we were respected. And that is really thanks to all of you, to all of your efforts, untiring efforts, and all the rewards that we have reaped because of your hard work.
Ronald Reagan once described an election as a time for choosing. If he were with us today, I think he would see this election very much as a time for choosing. We have the most liberal elected government in the history of the Republic, and they're trying to fundamentally change America. Groups like Action can play a key role in helping to restore the conservative principles that made this country the greatest society in the history of the world. Every individual can make a difference. I hope you'll do all that you can to make sure that we put America back on the right track.
The various action chapters, Lancaster County Action, Chester County Action, and York County Action, exist, I believe, because they understand that democracy can only work if the American people have the good character to deserve it. A nation that gives legal sanction to abortion is a nation in which democracy is threatened. A nation in which people ask more of the government than we can afford to pay is a nation in which democracy is threatened. Our democratic experiment is indeed threatened today, just as it always has been. Freedom is not free, as the Korean War Memorial says in Washington. It requires eternal vigilance, and it requires a nation of good character. The values that made America great are indeed worth protecting. America is worth defending. That is the broader purpose of Action. And I thank you for your work and involvement in the democratic process. It is very, very important.
To be politically effective, the conservative movement needs to have some distance from any party operation, and it needs to involve the 3 strands of conservatism: social conservatism, economic conservatism, and foreign policy or national defense conservatism. The social conservative leadership of originally Lancaster County Action, then Chester County Action, then York County and Adams County, and ultimately, I would hope, all 66 counties in the state. That force will be effective in advancing the conservative movement. You still need to have on-the-ground activist volunteers, and that's what the Action movement has learned to produce, and I think that it will advance the cause of conservatism in Pennsylvania because it'll help people become effective.
As you know, Pennsylvania is the Keystone State. If we can continue to be successful here in promoting our Judeo-Christian values, who knows how God will use us to help return our nation to Him.